How are you, Wulwyn?
I am, I am, I'm
Oh, that there's just that much. Like
I am,
we're gonna condense it into data bits.
yeah, yeah. But I just, today I said to myself, I was getting ready and I saw this. So it's a Nigerian necklace, a male necklace, and it has the bracelet to it. So when you go into weddings and ceremonies, you wear it, and it's really, really heavy. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go wear it, and show all my wares today. And, just change it up a bit.
That's it. You style it, man. I tell you. Well, that's the ceremonial part says a lot right there. I mean, it almost feels to me today. I mean, we always say this, and I certainly feel it. And this is
Mm-hmm.
one of my favorite times, in the month is when you and I get to talk. And
Gotcha.
so it's a ceremony just within itself.
Hey.
So I'll say that. But also, I don't know about you, but the last 2 weeks, I probably had to call a friend of mine. I said, what is going on? Because I mean, literally from the last time you and I talked,
Mm-hmm.
series of D's in a row, it was this friend being diagnosed with cancer.
Ooh.
This person, their husband walking out on them. I mean, it was like each day something different. And then my brother actually was rushed to the hospital mid part of last week.
Oh my goodness.
With extreme back pains, which my parents both suffered with during stress times, throughout my upbringing. So, it kind of, I guess, runs in the family. Knock on wood, I haven't had it yet. But, this is my baby brother, so he's 48.
Mm-hmm.
But it saved his life, the doctor said, because when they got him there, they couldn't get his heart to get back to normal.
Wow.
And they ended up finding a blood clot in his lung. And the doctors were like, he could have been a stairwell away from either a cardiac issue or a stroke.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's home now. He's resting comfortably, and they've got him on the blood thinners and all that stuff. But but the one thing that I find in all of this is in all the patterns. I also got a text yesterday that two of my good friends are both in the hospital because they had an accident. They're a married couple. And I'm like, good Lord, but all the patterns, when I stop and think about it, knowing the people and even some of my own stuff that's been coming up, and like knowing my own patterns.
Yep.
There are these amazing lessons. It's like we're having this shakedown, right? Like all of the things we've been doing, that just have not been serving us, and it's, how did I equated it today to a client as that blankie thing. So we've had a blankie since we were 2, and it's nasty. I mean, this blankie at this point in our lives is nasty, but we're clinging to that blankie because it's like, no, and God's like, you got to let go of the blankie. And we're like, no. Like, it's our blankie. It's our comfort place. And
wow.
I know it's gross and it's not serving me anymore, but it's all I know and I can't let go. And so then God's just like, okay, fine. We're going to have a situation where the blankie burns, and because you need to let go of the blankie, right? There's at some point we have to move forward. And I really feel like in a lot of ways, that's what's been going on with these sudden, catastrophes. I mean, I don't mean to downplay it.
Correct.
But, we often hear talk about the higher purpose, right? There's the mundane purpose. There's the storyline and the human storyline.
Yeah.
And then there's the higher purpose. And I always strive to look at the higher purpose because that perspective gives me peace, brings me peace.
Correct.
So, yeah. So I've been seeing some outrageous storylines, blankie lines, as I've been calling like the blankie, that on one side, you just pray that it's going to be okay. On the other side, it's brought me a tremendous peace. Certainly with my brother, it's brought out some incredible conversations.
Correct.
I mean, I have had some really great conversations with him, in the last week and a half or so. And so I can't see these things as bad. I mean, it's, you know, I know some people may argue with me.
Mm,
But at the same time, I've been in awe. I think I've been humbled, you know,
mm,
these moments when, I mean, and this is nothing like what some people are dealing with right now, but you know, when you're brought to your knees for whatever reason, and you're humbled to the fact that you don't have control. You just don't. The best you have is what you got in the moment.
mm,
And you know, this year there's a lot going on now, even I think that has us kind of thinking in terms of fear. You know, I mean, I know a lot of people have shut down, locked down, not going to Thanksgiving with family, not, you know, because of COVID. And I'm not here to judge. It's not, there's no right or wrong. Like, people get
mm-mm.
to do what's comfortable for them.
Correct.
But all I ask people is this a decision you're making out of fear or out of intelligent choice?
Mm,
Because anything we respond to out of fear usually doesn't end well. And I don't mean that in an apocalyptic kind of way.
mm-mm.
I mean that we miss out on something, right? We miss out on feeling fulfilled in our choice, feeling at peace with our choice. Because when we're making a decision based on fear, it's not really a choice. It's a
Mm,
reaction. I
mm,
mean, it is a choice, you know, we're choosing fear, but
correct.
it's not an intentional choice that is an empowered one.
Mm,
We're giving our power away in making this choice. We're sacrificing ourselves for the mission in
mm,
this choice when we're making one out of fear. And that's all I want people to think about is this a reaction to the, oh, how awfuls? Is this what the news is telling you? Ah, you know, or is this a calculated decision based on what you feel is right? And like I said, no judgment either way. I'm not here to say what's right or wrong. I'm not, you know, if you talked about last time, I thought it was so beautiful. You're like, I must stay neutral. I can't take sides.
mm-mm.
There's something in me that's so deeply rooted that I'm realizing I am not here to take sides. That's not what life is about. It's not about sides, as we talked about last time.
Yep.
So I just feel, my husband put a post up about, I don't know if it was specifically about Thanksgiving or the holidays, but
Mm,
something around similar to what I just said. But I mean, the reactions, you know, and I always tell him, like, you know, you got to know better. But, you know, he's one of these guys that just likes to poke the lion, and not to cause instigation to get under people's skin,
mhm,
but to have people think.
mm,
That he doesn't do it to piss people out, although people choose to be pissed off, but he really does it to get people to think. That's just
mhm.
his personality.
Gotcha.
And but I'm always sitting going, get ready. Because you know, if you're putting this on Facebook, you gotta know you're gonna get some.
Correct.
And what's interesting is the people who agree with the power of choice and not giving your power away when you're making choice
Mhm.
are just like, hey, good point, man. The people who don't agree, it's like, you know, when there's this 100, you know, page response.
Ah.
And it's just kind of like, huh, that's interesting. Right. It reminds me of when I'm with my clients is nobody takes time to celebrate, but they take a lot of time to look at what's wrong.
Mm, mm.
We pour so much energy into the ah! and very little into the yay.
Look, so I thought about you sometime last week and I was like, hey, can't wait, to talk. And um, because I think if we talk during the week, we wouldn't have enough to talk about now. So I'm using this as a sacred space to say, what, I'm going to keep this until, oh my goodness, I want to talk to her. I want to talk to her, but no, I'm going to wait. So on the other hand, still residue from the last 2 weeks, right? And this time it's on another level. I just spent about an hour just listening to, praise music, etc. Just filling my brain, filling my mind with it. And the reason I am, I am, whew, when gosh, it's gloomy outside. It's gloomy outside. I just looked outside and I just said, maybe the reason why I'm feeling not doom and gloom, but just feeling meh
I
is
love that word,
is I know it is a meh.
like,
You know, and it describes how that feeling is, right? Meh. So the reason I'm
lovely.
feeling this way is I always took it from the spiritual side most times. And I am seeing that people, we state that we are Christians, right? Hey, that's my purview, and I'm going to keep purviewing from that purview. um, the greatest, you can prophesy, you can speak in tongues, you can preach, you can give money away, you can do missions, you can do all these things. And if you're not doing it in love, it cancels. So it cancels. And if it cancels, then what?
Mm.
I I am seeing church mates. I am seeing friends. I am seeing people just come against each other because one side is for Biden and the other side is for Trump. It's okay. Pick, vote, do it. You voted and discuss. And in your discussion, be kind.
Mm. Oh, amen. Oh boy, amen to
Be
that.
kind. Because this is what brings war. And at the end of the war, when you're sitting with your limbs off and you're looking at your friend across from you, you go, why did we do this? So before you even get in it, be kind. And here's what gets me. I'm baffled. They they use the word of God, and all I see is I'm behind my corner. I bring my head and I sling it. The righteous are live by faith, and da 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 da. Then it go back. Then the other one comes. Oh, really? Yeah. Ching. Thou shalt not do this, and I'm just looking and I'm saying, when you can, there's righteous indignation that you have for God, which really isn't for God. It's your preference of the two. So you take it
Yeah,
from the word.
we do take our preference and we put it at a higher level. When we equate our preference to God, there's an issue.
There you go. And that's what, when you were talking about your patterns and the suddenness and the catastrophe and then the higher purpose, I was like, oh my goodness, she is diving right into what my thought process is. When we can become unselfish and think on what God wants us to do in these situations, we will start to find answers to whatever we're going through. And you, the kindness, operating out of love, ensuring that I mean, somebody came on my page and on my wife's page and said, I thought you were a Bible believing Christian, when she said she voted for Biden. And the reason, and then there's others. And I'm not going, you know what? Ah, I'm not going to just come and talk broadly. I'm going to talk because it's my experience. So at my church, my pastor is for Trump. I don't have a problem with that. What I have a concern with, I have a problem with, why I'm antsy a bit with it, is when you, oh, something went on, I can see my other screen. When you get on the pulpit and you preach, that what you do is you alienate a particular group. And whichever group that's on your side, that's in favor of what you're doing, let's continue. It's still streaming on Facebook. So
Awesome.
it's still streaming. So let me just refresh it. So we had a power outage here.
Oh.
I know. So here's the where was I? I was right in the middle
You
of
were talking about your pastor and you
so
didn't have
yeah.
a problem. Yeah.
So pastor goes and he talks on this and he base the reason for voting for Trump on the Bible. Even
I'm
if I was
surprised it's even in conversation. When did church and state get back together?
more so when I was in another church and the pastor brought a Wick County board that was in my favor, right? I said to myself something, and the person got on there and spoke. I was like, man, I run from politics and come here for my mind, right? So when the pastor did that, you base the choice on you base the reason on the Bible. The children, the sheep in the pasture, and I'm going to use colors. I'm going to use red and I'm going to use purple. The red sheep agree with, I'm going to use blue. No, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to use green. The green sheep agrees with you. The brown sheep or whatever color go, but that's not how I feel. That's not what I do. When it progresses, the green sheep feels they are empowered to come and go, you don't know the Bible. This is how the Bible is. It alienates at that point. And all that I'm going through in my mind is the 10 o'clock or the 11 o'clock hour is the most, I'm not going to say segregated time anymore. It's the most alienated time. And the reason it's the most alienated time, when we say that we're building a house of nations, a house of prayer, when we're building a house for God, I'm not saying you don't have political, but you operate from the, and I'm not saying this is what my pastor did. I don't put disclaimers after disclaimer on there, right? You have to operate out of love, and you have to know the sheep in your pasture, and you have to know, because here is what happens. My pea brain, my perception is, do you know what happens if when we say we want to open our house, the house of God, to homosexuals, people who have aborted, individuals who have killed otherwise, people who are tattooed, who look different from us. And when we speak from that pulpit, or we want to even get Muslims in, when we speak from that pulpit, if we're not operating and letting that Holy Spirit operate with love in our conversation, this that I'm experiencing, my perceived alienation, my alienation where I'm like, oh my goodness, do I go there? Because the green sheep are, they're in, they're standing and posturing and they are slinging at me, but I want to sling back. Don't get me wrong. But every time I attempt to sling back, the Holy Spirit goes, you don't take sides. Keep quiet. So why is the Holy Spirit working on me when I want to sling, but then he's allowing other people to sling?
Well, he is working on other people. That's the blanky thing. It's just that they're not listening, then finally some catastrophe comes along that forces them to listen. Right. And those are the sheep that don't listen are the ones that will get the catastrophes. And I'm not judging. I'm not saying, oh, because you didn't listen, you get, the slap of God, but that's kind of how it works. It is what it is. We all get equal opportunity. My biggest issue too is that when we hide behind anything, whether it's religious zealotship or political righteousness, we are not taking responsibility for our own choices. We're saying, oh, I'm not taking responsibility. It's because the Bible says. Or it's because my family has been raised Republican, and that's just what. Stand up and take some responsibility for your own choice. Don't say it's because of the Bible or because of your family or whatever. You want to choose it, own it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't make it about something it's not. That's why anything other than conversations about the Bible, in my opinion, humble opinion,
Mm-hmm.
don't belong in church. I'm not coming to church to get political. I'm not coming to church to be, so even if it's not even about sides, that's not why I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm there to share in love, in communion, and worship, and many other things. Those things not being the reasons I'm there.
Correct.
And that's why my family and I, we have yet to find a church community we feel comfortable with, because everywhere we went, it felt segregated. When my daughter was little, the church we used to go to, anytime, she's 2 years old, and they would play music and she wanted to move to the music, and everybody's looking like, you don't move, like stay in your seat. I was like, oh, hey, no, peace out, not for us. It's been a challenge, but to the point, to the conversations you and I have had, I don't need a building or a congregation to be with God. And that's how we've chosen to just live our lives in accordance, share our conversations with those who we can share our conversations with. But I choose not to, I've been voting a big fat no on that, because every time I've gone into places of worship, I see more segregation than I do seeing coming together. That's been my experience. And I just don't want to vote on that. I just choose, like, okay, it is what it is. If this is what is going on out there, then I just choose to do it differently. But to your point, I'm saying this because that's that feeling of segregating or making things exclusive, instead of inclusive, causes people not to want to be a part of what you're doing, even if they hold the same beliefs at the core. Right. And that's where I think, and it's true on any platform, whether it's social media or whether it's church. When we go to these places and we get up on the pulpit and we start spewing information, I really want people to be more mindful of their why. Why are you doing this? What is your ultimate desired outcome? And have you thought about it? And the answer, I'm pretty sure in most cases, is no. For most people, they're just responding based on their emotionality, or responding based on, some sort of trigger that they're in. What I think is interesting is people forget that we're mirrors for one another. So when somebody's slinging at someone else, what they need to be doing is, wow, I'm being really righteous at this point. But I'm going to be.
Oh no, hey.
What they need to be doing is looking in the mirror. Right. So the whole thing that you said about being on the war field, and it's like we're all in bits and pieces, we're looking at each other like, well, where did this get us? We've fought wars for religious reasons for centuries. And so, but it's time. It's like, I think we're a little beyond that. I'd like to believe we're beyond the dark ages, that we've learned something in history, and that we don't have to keep doing this stupid dance, time and time again. But that people need to realize that you're my brother, you're my sister. So if I'm slinging something at you, it's because there's something in me that I feel that I'm not in accordance with, right? So instead of projecting it on you, maybe I need to look at what's going on in me that you triggered. And if people would get that right, there would be so much less of what we're seeing right now. People don't want to take responsibility. We're fragile. We want to be comfortable. We want to be safe. We want to be right. And we want to look good. That's ego. All of that is ego. It's always ego all the time. I don't care. No exceptions.
Yep.
And so if we ask why, and it has anything to do with any of those four things, we need to think twice before we start tapping away at the keyboard and putting stuff out there. And, I hold, I mean, again, talking more about walking the walk, I hold myself accountable to that practice.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So whatever I'm saying, I'm doing. Do I always do it perfectly? No, I'm human. But
Right.
do I always strive to do it? Amen to that. Yeah, I do. And so I think that that's the piece too that I'm seeing, is that the mistrust that we have when people get up to talk about these things. We're like, dude, I saw you last week. I had this problem when I was in undergrad because I went to a Jesuit school, and I would see all my Catholic friends saying one thing in church and doing something totally different on the weekends. And I'm like, wait a minute. You claim to be this, but then you're doing that, and that's totally going against what you claim. I'm confused. Which one is it? And I have no, fine, live your life however, but don't claim to be one way and then not be that way. And that congruency is what is hard, or that lack of congruency is what's hard for all of us when we see these people, the church leaders or leaders of any kind, getting up and saying one thing and doing another. I mean, that's the boy who cried wolf. We can't trust it. Like, who are you? And if you're not being who you are, then you have no right to stand up there and tell the rest of us what we need to be doing, or what we should consider or think about, because you're not doing it, right? You're creating division. You're creating the lack of an environment that makes it hard to love, hard to accept, hard to look in. People aren't vulnerable when they don't feel safe. Right? So creating an inclusive environment where people feel safe to be vulnerable so that they can learn from their mistakes and learn from their missteps and be honest and upfront. And more than that, embrace their dark side, because guess what? We've got good and evil, folks.
Oh yeah.
This whole conversation about we're all good and they're all evil, knock it off. It's just not true. There is no all good and all evil. And the people, what do they say? The one who smelt it, dealt it. The person who's sitting there crying, oh, he's a whatever, he's a what, one finger out, three fingers back. Like, come on, we know these things.
Yeah, Traci.
Right? So I feel you. You could tell I'm
I know, I get you too, sis. You talked about all the various things that came, all these different events in your life, in your family and friends, right? The sudden as the blankie syndrome, if we may call it, a framework. How easy or how hard is it to be kind? But I think the better question I want to ask you is, what is love? When you hear, let's love one another, right? And again, it's coming from that backdrop of, because Christians always talk about love, and I agree with it. I completely agree with it. In 2020, in this particular climate, does God go on a shelf and then you operate, then you come back and you don God again afterwards, and he said, let's move on, let's be friends? What is love, sis? What is it?
To me, it starts with truth and honesty. It really does. Love is reverence, love is honor, love is clarity. I mean, I've said so many times to friends and other ones, clarity is kindness, and kindness is love. When I say to somebody, this is what, would you be open to the considerations of my feedback? And that person lets that in, and I tell them in all truthfulness what I observe, and I own it as my own observation. For whatever, however this may be helpful for you, because I care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't bother. Right? And it's not being nice. I think there's a big difference between being nice and being kind, right? I remember having a conversation a couple of years ago in a networking group that I was in, and I was in a situation where I was on the committee that either accepted new applicants or didn't based on fit.
Gotcha.
And there was a woman who came through, and I just didn't find her to be present. When she came to the meetings, she was, off talking to people. She was on her laptop during meetings, during networking meetings.
Uh-huh.
And when my time came to be able to give her feedback, I said, could I give you some constructive feedback? Oh, I love feedback. Feedback's fabulous. And when I told her, she didn't like it. I just said, my experience with you is that you're not present. And I'm concerned about that. Because in order to really help one another in this chapter, we have to be present with one another. And I'm just concerned that maybe that's not where you're at. I was very honest, very kind, very, and when it came back at the end, she just lashed out when she wasn't accepted. And it wasn't just my vote. It was, I'm not the only one voting on this island. She told the person who gave her the news, oh, Traci Phillips is not a nice person. And when I was told this, I said to the woman who told me, I said, that may very well be true. I'm not trying to be nice, but I am striving to be kind. Right. And niceness can be about not being truthful, making, feeling like it's my place. Love is.
Okay. So Traci had, I don't know, I still see myself working here. And we were discussing love. And I'll wait for her to get back on. It's just, before we speak, before we do things, as we are engaging with one another during this time, or any time for that matter, we have to truly understand that words mean a lot. Words mean so much, that we have to think, how is this going to come across? And we shouldn't be flippant, because our flippancy enables us to alienate. Our flippancy hurts. Our flippancy puts us in a corner, or we divide. It's so important that in this season, that we care, that we show love. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. But you have to truly gird yourself and make sure that it's a higher purpose. It's not you controlling it. Welcome back, Traci Phillips. What?
You lose power, and then I lost power.
So that's what's happening in North Carolina.
We just kind of roll with it. I mean, this has really been the energy of the last 2 weeks, to be sure. But I don't even know what I was saying, but I feel like these are important points as we move forward, because I don't think it's going to get, people say, oh, we're going through and eventually it'll even out. I don't think that even out that's really not what we should be waiting for, until we can go back to, because it's what I find is where people are at in their development of what they're capable of really comes through when we're in challenge. And 2020 has been a whole bunch of challenges that have taken us and highlighted, really, like literally with one of those neon highlighters, our fragility, how much we want to be comfortable. And as soon as we're not, we turn on each other. Like, I mean, I've seen people in families, loved ones, turning on each other like a dog fight. I mean, it's like,
yeah,
like, come on. I mean, do you think maybe if we step back, we might want to look at the fact that we need to develop a little bit of resiliency and, good, crucial conversation strategies, and, how is it to hold a space? Because I mean, before we can get to the concept of love, which, by the way, what's coming through for me is that 2021, and what I wrote this down, what did I call it? It is the theme for 2021 is follow your heart. I really feel like coming to 2021, more people are going to be making decisions based on their heart and not their head. But in order for us to get to that place of self-love and love of other, these other things need to happen first. I mean, we've been living in concept land. You know, we've been living off of the concept of love, the concept of God, the concept of walking in faith, the concept of, but to the point that we were talking about last time, the walk, I don't think we're really very good at actually applying the concept. It's a construct, right? And yet when we look at our lives and how we're operating within them, again, and I'm talking as a collective, so nobody get personally defensive here, you know, is that we don't even, I mean, it's kind of like expecting ourselves to drive a car when we're a toddler and haven't learned how to walk yet. You know, we need to learn these basic kindness, you know, acceptance. We are a culture that is so bad. I mean, if you think about what you came from in your country and what you've seen and what you've experienced and how that has made you able to accept things in a different way. You know, I always know people who are really good at, it is what it is, you know, we're going to accept this and work with it, have been through some stuff. Because when you live in an environment that makes everything easy for you and it's convenient and it's comfortable and you can have it the way you want, and if you raise your voice, you get even more of what you want. I mean, that whole customer is right thing has always driven me crazy. We get to work on a solution. Nobody's right. Right is about ego. Why are we coddling that? Why are we promoting that? Wow. The customer gets to be an ego is basically what that statement says. And I just really need for people to get this message, need for people to understand that if they don't start looking at these key pieces in themselves, their blankie is going to be ripped away from them in very uncomfortable ways. Time after time after time. How many times does your blankie need to be ripped? How many times does your tower have to come down? How many times does your house need to catch on fire before you start to say, maybe it's something I'm doing or not doing? Not him, not her, not God, not Trump, not, you know, the Democrats, me.
Yeah. Ownership, huh? Ownership. I was talking to my wife earlier, just before I got on here. She came in and she said, honey, how are you? And I just you know, and hugged, prayed. And she said, we have lost focus when the water started to get hot. So we're all in the pot and the water's getting hot and we're losing focus and we're looking to man to be the solution in this process. Either man.
Yeah, well, and we go into victim. Correct. I'm in hot water. Who's perpetrating this? Who created it? And who needs to fix it?
Correct. So when you lose focus like that, all of a sudden that gap where you had your eyes focused on God, that gap comes in and becomes empty. And you know who fills it, right? He comes and he fills it properly, and he gives you that self-righteous indignation and that ego that we're talking about, that selfishness that says, I am. I've heard sermons that says that, I've heard sermons in my church that, you know, there's global warming God has given abundance, which I agree. There's no oil shortage. So I agree with that. I completely agree. In 2020, why is it that if Trump leaves, America's going to the dump?
Why are we pinning it all on one person? Either way.
If Biden comes in, America's going to the dump. America is gone. When Obama came, America was going to the dump. George Bush, the other side, Democrat. Oh my goodness, America is finished. America is finished.
Why it is if we hold that attitude.
Why this abundance that we have on global warming that God has abundantly blessed us? Why is it that any man who comes in this position, I'm not looking to him for my blessings. I'm not looking to him to keep me safe. I'm not looking to him for America. No president can save America. None. None. No president can save America. No president can save any country on this earth. Look at the Roman Empire. Look at the British. Look at every single thing that has gone up. It comes down. No man. And God's proven that, hey, and I'm not saying Wulwyn, God, I am. And where I am, no other person gets my glory. And don't tell me I'm putting Biden or I'm putting Trump, because again, I always think about Job's friends. When you look at the arguments are perfect. Those guys gave perfect arguments. If you just stick to argument and don't look at any, you're like, wow, wow, wow. And then God comes and just ticks the argument and just whoop, bats it out of here. And you're like, oh my goodness, sorry. So we have to be careful. And I think that's where, when we're kind and loving, as you defined it, it's unselfish, it's kind, it's not nice. Nice is different from kind and loving, because I can tell you, you can tell me, you can lovingly tell me, Wulwyn, your mouth stinks. No, really, you can lovingly tell me that.
Yeah.
But you can also,
you're like, woo, dude, need to go brush teeth there.
Wulwyn, go get friendly with a toothbrush, right? Or you can be mean with it.
Yes.
You can be mean with it. So all I'm saying, there are people going to the hospital. Your brother's going to the hospital almost dying. There are people who are in accidents, people who are losing their homes in this particular moment. But we're sitting there, we're here fighting one another instead of going and assisting or being of help.
Yeah. Just loving. I mean, my brother and I, just like I was saying there, we've had some great conversations. He and I are very different.
Okay.
And yet there's always been love there. and yet a lot of the dynamics, I think, have created patterns. And, one of them is, and I know when I was first born, female, right? So, I'm the other mama, and I'm telling what he should be doing and shouldn't be doing. And because he does things differently, growing up, it was like, why are you doing things that way? That's stupid. So he has this pattern of being like, like when he makes a decision, he probably doesn't want my opinion.
There you go.
Right. And so, when we were first talking about what was going on with the doctors, he was sharing with me kind of, this was way early, and he was still in the hospital. I said, well, how do you feel about that? And he says, well, I don't think they're making it up. And that's not where I was coming from. I wasn't questioning like the doctors. I was just asking how he felt, literally. But that interpretation came from a dynamic where he was so accustomed when we were growing up to me questioning. We haven't lived near each other for a long, long time, and we don't often talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was this beautiful opportunity for me to see those dynamics, like, oh, he's still operating off of all he ever knows.
Correct.
And my next response was, I just love you so much. Oof. And I want you to be well. And it's like, I knew he was getting defensive. I knew he was upset. And that's love. Love is recognizing that when the other person gets upset, there's a reason. And they get to be that, love, unconditional love is loving people regardless of how they're acting, because we're not loving their actions. We're loving their being. I mean, any parenting 101 says when you deal with a child, you make it about their behavior, not about their person. Correct. I love you. It's your behavior I'm having an issue with, And that is a practice in unconditional love, is in kindness. It's your behavior that I'm going to be honest about, right? But it's never a question at all that I love you.
Wow.
And that, all I could do in that moment, it wasn't even worth it. Be like, oh, that's not what I meant. I just have stopped being the reaction to the defense, right? So when someone gets defensive, like, no, I didn't mean that. I don't, there's not a single moment that I do that in. I don't apologize for their interpretation of my meaning.
Yes.
But what I do try to do is meet it with what I feel gets to be understood. In other words, in that place, The reason I was asking how he was feeling was because I care, because I love him.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. And he got it. You know, when I called him a couple days later when he was finally home, I said, I just really want to apologize to you. I'm going to get emotional. I want to apologize to you because I do realize those dynamics that you've lived under most of your life. And, you know, it was what it was when we were at that point in our lives. But I just want you to know that I take full responsibility and accountability for how I have trained you to be with me in a lot of ways.
Wow. And
I'm not trying to control or manipulate what you do with this information moving forward, but I just want you to know, you know, as my heart is open, it's really important that I be honest with and take responsibility for what I recognize I have done and what I have been. And I think that that's where I'd like to see the world be. I'm not saying be like me. I'm just saying that there's incredible release and relief and peace. And, you know, it's funny because the next day my brother's kind of more of a like, keeps, you know, you don't want to play poker with the guy. You know, he keeps cards very close to his chest. But I got a text the next day. He says, that conversation meant more to me than I can tell you.
Wow.
And that's love. Those are those connective points where it's like, I got you, man. We are very different. We will always be very different. Yes. We will always have different opinions. He votes one way, I vote another. I mean, we couldn't be more. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine who does astrology.
It's power shortage again.
I'm over here having a soliloquy.
Go ahead with this soliloquy, sis. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Having a conversation with who knows who, maybe no one.
But you know, you were saying how different the two of you were, how, you know, just, but still loving the being, loving the person, right? It's no matter what the ideology is, no matter what the ideology. That's why I asked someone, I was thinking about something. I said, Lord, if my child comes to me and says he's gay, or she says she's gay, I hate, well, or will I love them back? Or will I love them the way they are? And just pray, right? Because I think I would continue loving them. I will continue loving them and ensuring that it's back online. I will continue loving them. The person who says they have a different ideology and I can't, and I keep slinging at you, let's just, I get you. I understand. Okay. I'm not going to change you. You're not going to change me. But let's be kind, right? Let's just be kind. Traci, my dear, you know, 5 more minutes, you know, you keep talking, sister. I'm enjoying you talk.
Like, we keep taking breaks, going back and forth. But, you know, I kind of, back to what I was saying about children and raising them and saying, you know, making it about the behavior and not about their person. I love you, but it's your behavior. I think a lot of times when we really do have an issue with the other person's perception or the other person, think about it like behavior. There's nothing wrong with bringing up and saying, I'm struggling with your decision or your comment or your behavior, right? The way you behaved. We need to not make it about the person, right? That's the thing that my husband and I were talking about when some people came back to his very loving post. It was just, you know, like, I choose not to get caught up in fear. I'm going to make my choices, you know, and so many personal comments. What are you, stupid? You know, like, why do we need to make it personal? Why do we, You know, that's the not separating behavior from person, right? That's the not loving. You know, that is not loving. That's not nice. It's not
No,
kind. It's not loving. It's
it's
none of those
not.
things, you know. And I think that that's the piece that I wish people were just like, I'm not saying don't ever bring up issues that you might have with
Mhm.
what other people are thinking, believing, seeing, saying, doing, but just make it about the behavior, not about the person.
Not the
I
person.
really do believe that we are all good people. I mean, I guess there are some people out there who are
Yeah.
legitimately, intentionally creating chaos and havoc and not nice stuff.
Mhm.
But I choose to believe that at the core, people are good and that there's always a reason why we go in a different direction from good.
Yes.
And finding that place, like you were talking about bridging that gap, we have also, we get to ask for support. God is always there. Our ancestors are always there. Our loved ones who have passed are always there.
Mm.
We get to
Mm.
ask them because you know what? They're in a pure place. They're in a place that doesn't play these games.
Mm.
And when
Mm.
we, you know, we can ask God, but we can also ask these, you know, call off of the connections that we have with these people in these pure places
Mm.
to help guide us when we're struggling in this way, because I think it is about learning to crawl and walk before we can practice this thing called love,
Mm.
because it's still conceptual. It's still a concept, and I don't think that most people are very apt at the practice of true unconditional love. And so we get to give ourselves a break, but we get to be intentional about the practice.
Wow.
Because what we're doing now, as I see it, is anything, it's not even close.
Mm-mm.
And we're going to get our blankie snatched from us time after time if we don't start getting closer intentionally and with work. It's going to take work. And yes, it's uncomfortable. I am not here to make your life comfortable. That's what God says. I'm not here to make your life
Correct.
comfortable. Otherwise, where do you build your muscle? Where do you learn to walk your walk?
Yes.
It's not a comfortable walk. Nobody promised comfort in this lifetime.
Mm-mm.
You know, so if you're making all your decisions based on whether you're comfortable or not and living in this fear of not being comfortable, you may not have a bunch of terrible things happen to you, but you're not going to have a life either.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Right? And I don't actually believe in the first part. I think things will, because the blankies are getting ripped. And so I do think that we're going to have a lot more befall us when we're not willing to start doing some of this work.
Whew. Power surge and all. Power surges.
We did
Network,
have some surges coming through today, for
network
sure.
going down, and then there were surges of input about, you know, just all of these different personal issues, you know, patterns that you see with family and friends. And then here I come with, you know, residue from observing how the Christians are hitting each other. For those of you who come on here and may be upset and angry, for those of you who would come and be, yay, thank you. Because Tracy and I had phone conversations and we were talking to ourselves, and then we said, eavesdrop. So you come and you be angry at it. Hey, just imagine you're overhearing us talking on the cell phone or on our phones. That's it. Tracy, my sister, thank you. It was always a pleasure talking with you.
Oh, thank you. Same to you, Wulwyn. Thanks for being my brother, and I would say my brother in crime, you know, my brother in this deep desire we both have to create a space for people to come and find whatever parts of themselves they're looking for, right? I think that's what our intention is that for people to come to have a place to come to consider things and find what they're trying to discover in their lives, you know, because we're called to talk about what we're called. You know, we don't have a script. It's not what am I trying to say? Predetermined.
Yep.
We haven't determined what we're going to talk about ahead of time. You know, whatever comes through does come through. And I'm not surprised we had some power surges today, because from what I understand, this is a very powerful day of change. So, you know, the fact that we get to be talking today is pretty cool. And there's a breakthrough I think a potential breakthrough if we choose it. So
Wow.
it's always a good time, but today was really special just within itself. So thank you for that.
Thank
And this
you.
is going to be, thank you for all the editing you're going to do on this. It's going to be fun to edit.
Oh, well, on that note, hey, let me cut it short so I can have less things to edit here. You guys have a good one. Take care and see
Bye.
you in the next 2 weeks. Bye-bye. Don't forget to go to the YouTube page, right? Don't forget to go there. Please go eavesdrop
Like
with,
and share, please.
and then here's the deal. It is, I'm going to type it in here. I'm not going to type it. I'm going to paste it in here because it is, we need you to come in there and go and subscribe. So go to https:// bit.ly/ again, eavesdrop in the moment. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.